It's interesting, isn't it? When you're little, you can't wait for the school year to be ending. You just sit all year long and you think about, oh, summer is coming, and all the plans and activities you do, and then blink of an eye, summer goes by, and then another school year. I remember doing that repeatedly because I loved the summer. Summer was my happiest time. I spent so much of it with my grandmother and my siblings, and outside and at the lake and in the water, or having all sorts of wonderful adventures. And it was so hard to keep track of time. And then as I grew older and had children, it was even harder to keep track of time. But instead of it dragging on, it seemed to take on this hyper speed. It happened like a warp speed. You're racing around, cooking and doing laundry and going to work and homework and football and basketball and soccer and violin and guitar and karate lessons. And it's just so difficult to keep track of everything in time and all the time. And this psalm talks about this, about the marking of time. And for me, it's such a relevant time for us to hear these words. And one of the things that this psalm is, it's attributed as a poem by Moses, but it talks about how hard it is to mark time and why even bother, kind of, is what it says. But one of the most important things it says is before there were mountains, before there were oceans, before there was ground or earth or anything, all the things that bring you such joy, before any of that existed, there was God. And that God has been, is, and will continue to be our dwelling place. Now, a dwelling place means more than just a place to get by and to live, doesn't it? Just like this very home that I am in right now, filming for the 200th take, I'll be honest. It's very difficult. I didn't go to seminary to be a videographer. I don't know anything about it. But it's so difficult to realize that home is a lot more than for structures, or our life is more of just the external structures. That the real thing that marks it and gives it meaning are the relationships. And first and foremost is the relationship that we have with God. We've gotten in such a frenetic pace. All of us have. There's no finger pointing at anyone. All of us have gotten to live and abide in this frenetic pace, in this place in the world where we are right now, full of anxiety and fear and uncertainty. And we sometimes forget that, like the psalm says, God existed. Before all the mess, before all the craziness, God has existed and God will continue to exist. And the marking of time is something that we are given an option of how we mark our time. How do we spend our time? Because you know what? The one commodity we don't get to get back, it's time. We can get money back. We can gain material things back. I remember when my house burned down in 2011, and I thought, my gosh, I'll never have a home again. And here I am, so fortunate to have a beautiful home. It comes back, but time doesn't. And one of the main things that this psalm talks about and the cries out for, the one thing that is asked for isn't a big house. It isn't money, isn't riches, it isn't one of the parables that Jesus told. It's a psalm. Once again, we've talked about the Psalms are very reflective of our own humanity. They talk about their horrible times, their good days, their bad days, their closeness and intimacy with God. And then there are times where they feel so very distant. And I'm going to talk to you right now about me and how distant I have felt and discouraged I felt from God. Really, since the very beginning of July, and the surgery went so wrong with my broken hand, which should have been a simple thing. And I think about you. I think about the fact that I was living in such pain that it changed not just me physically, but it changed my spirit, my emotions, my spiritual view of the world was colored by this chronic pain. And I think about how so many people are living in chronic pain right now, and I don't mean physically. I have had some relief, even though I'm definitely feeling the post-op pain right now. I've had some relief. Thank you, God, and thank you all for praying for me. It has made all the difference in the world. But I think about the pain that people live in, the chronic pain of not feeling loved, or feeling so terribly alone that they don't know what to do, or so worried financially or physically or emotionally about who they are or where do they belong or what their future will look like. And I think that's what this psalm was talking about. That God has been our dwelling place before anything occurred and will continue to be our dwelling place. But what this psalm cries out for is the wisdom for a pure heart, a wise heart. It's so funny because I've been thinking about this all week long. I've been thinking about this psalm, and the one thing you don't think of about your heart is wisdom. You think about love and spontaneity and joy, but I don't know how many of us ever go around praying for a wise heart. And yet when we don't, we lose track of everything. Everything gets out of order. I had a wonderful reminder of this lately. I've had some traumatic experiences in the last few months. Some loss occur, loss of my own mobility, my own independence, a lot of uncertainty, loss of important relationships. One just walks away and makes you feel disposable or unvalued, or you lose your mobility and you feel unvaluable or unable, and you realize how much you need other people. And I've had that very epiphany, how much I can't hold everything together. And I bet you probably feel that also. And the good news for this and for all of us today is that we don't have to hold it all together. In fact, that's what God is saying. A wise heart knows we can't hold it all together. If we hold it all together, we drop it, we mess it, make a big fat mess like I've tried to do with one hand tonight, filming everything, and everything's gone crashing around. So I want to share this one thing, and I'm going to let you go for today. On the day that I was having surgery, not even 2 weeks ago, I was really nervous. And second surgery during COVID, and you can't have anyone in there with you, you feel very vulnerable. And I was texting with some people, some friends from church, and asking for prayer because I know y'all are so faithful and good and loving about that. And I still felt alone. I felt better, and I thought, well, I can't control anything, so I might as well just accept this and trust that God is indeed present. And the little curtain behind the waiting room where I was in for hours before the surgery, the curtain pulled back, and a nurse walked in and said, "Hey, Holly." And I recognized her voice, and my eyes got really big. And I said, "Sandra?" And in walks a nurse, and she says, "Hey, I was so glad to see your name out there on your chart. I'm going to be with you in the surgery." And I started to cry like I'm starting to cry right now because my heart was filled with God's wisdom at that moment. And she introduced me to another nurse that was in there helping her get me ready for surgery. And she said, "Holly baptized me years ago. And at Pulaski Heights Christian Church, a very special church, I had indeed baptized Sandra. And at that very moment, Sandra rebaptized me into the wisdom and the provision of a loving, faithful God who really does mean it when he says he will not ever leave, forsake, or abandon any of us. So my wish for you, my prayer for you, is the wisdom of God to abide in your heart. The wisdom of God that tells you you are beautiful, you are treasured, you are a beloved child of God. That is a mysterious truth to hold on to. But it is a truth that changes our reality if we'll let our hard, stubborn selves accept it. So that's my question to you. Will you let go of your pride and your strength and your ego for just a little minute? And will you just trust that God has been and will be and continue to be right there with you right now, and is indeed in your heart, loving you with the love that only God can do, filling up those cracks, those crevices, those broken places, and redeeming them. And for that I say, thanks be to God, and thanks be for each and every one of you and the gifts that you bring onto this day and to this earth. God bless you and keep you.